I still remember vividly the day my family moved into our new house, or rather our old house, a mansion that had stood for over 100 years. It was far from the town center, nestled within a sparse forest where the sounds of traffic couldn't reach. My parents said it was the perfect place to escape the noise and enjoy fresh air. But from the moment the moving truck pulled up to the front gate, I felt something off. The house stood there, towering and eerily silent. Its weathered red brick walls, moss-covered roof tiles, and narrow, dark windows resembled empty eyes watching our every move. A rusted iron fence encircled the property, its sharp spikes like fangs, ready to devour anyone who dared to cross. My parents were excited, talking about how they would renovate everything. The large backyard where my mother could plant flowers, and a spacious living room with its antique fireplace. My older sister tried to appear optimistic too, but I could see the tension in her eyes. The moment I stepped through the doorway, a cold draft wrapped around me. It wasn't just the usual chill, it seeped into my skin, making my hair stand on end. For a brief second, I felt as if someone was standing right behind me, breathing lightly against my neck. I whipped around, nothing. Inside, the house was vast yet disturbingly empty. The light streaming in from the tall windows couldn't quite chase away the shadows lurking in the corners. The wooden floor creaked under each step, as if groaning under the weight of time. At the end of the first floor hallway, I noticed a large mirror. Its surface was covered in a thin layer of dust, but it still reflected our family as we walked past. Except, I saw an extra figure in the reflection. I froze, my eyes locked on the mirror. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but a chill slithered down my spine. Something was wrong with this house, but I didn't say anything. That first night, as I was unpacking my things in my room, I heard footsteps. At first, I assumed it was my parents or sister moving around upstairs. But then I realized the sound was coming from right outside my door. Slow, heavy footsteps, stopping just at the threshold. I held my breath, waiting, but nothing happened. I thought about checking, about opening the door. But the moment my fingers brushed the doorknob, an overwhelming sensation crashed over me, as if something was standing just on the other side, silently waiting for me to make the mistake of opening the door. I pulled my hand back. I didn't open it. And then a whisper. It wasn't clear, not a language I could understand, but it was right next to my ear, even though the door remained shut. I slammed my suitcase shut and dove under my blanket, curling up as if the fabric could somehow protect me from whatever was lurking in the dark. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be afraid. And this was only the first night. After that tense first night, I tried to convince myself that everything was just my imagination. Maybe I wasn't used to the new house yet, or perhaps the vast space made sounds echo in strange ways. But then, other things started happening, small, subtle things that became harder and harder to ignore. During the day, the house seemed almost normal. Sunlight streamed through the windows, giving it an old but warm charm. But the moment the sun began to set, a suffocating unease settled over me. The air felt heavier, the shadows deeper, and I began to sense that I wasn't truly alone in this house. It started with the shadows. I often caught glimpses of a dark shape moving just at the edge of my vision, but whenever I turned to look, nothing was there. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light or my imagination running wild. But then, I started noticing something strange. Those shadows weren't just fleeting blurs. They had a shape, the shape of a person, and they were everywhere. In the living room, as I watched TV. In the kitchen, when I bent down to get something from the fridge and saw a reflection move across the glass. In my bedroom, when I was reading under the soft glow of my bedside lamp and noticed a dark figure standing just outside my door, though the door was still shut. At night, the house seemed to come alive. I often heard footsteps in the hallway, but when I opened the door to check, the corridor was always empty. Once, I even heard whispers right outside my room. At first, I thought it was my parents or sister talking, but when I peeked out, all I saw was a long, dark hallway, so silent that I could hear my own heartbeat. One night, just as I was about to fall asleep, A loud crash echoed from downstairs. It sounded like something heavy had been knocked over. My heart pounded as I sat up, straining to hear. But after a few moments, there was nothing. The next morning, I asked my parents and sister if they had heard anything. They just looked at me, confused. "No one heard anything," my mother said. "Maybe you were dreaming." And on it, half-typed, was a single chilling message. "Get out." My body went ice cold. No one in my family could have done this. And even if someone had been playing a cruel prank, how had they entered my room without making a sound? Even my sister, who had tried to stay optimistic at first, began to change. She became quieter, restless, and sleep-deprived. Sometimes, I caught her standing by her window, staring outside as if searching for something in the darkness. One night, I saw her slam her bedroom door shut in panic. When I knocked and asked what was wrong, she answered in a voice so soft I almost couldn't hear her. Someone whispered in my ear while I was sleeping. A shiver ran down my spine. That was when I realized I wasn't the only one feeling uneasy in this house. Even my mother, the most practical person I knew, started acting strangely. One day, I found her standing in front of the large mirror downstairs, staring at her reflection. When I asked if something was wrong, she just shook her head and walked away without a word. But something about that moment haunted me, because when I had glanced at the mirror beside her, I saw something else reflected back. A dark figure standing right behind my mother. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. That night, I had a nightmare. In my dream, I was standing in the living room, but I couldn't move. The air was thick, pressing down on my chest like an invisible weight. Then, I heard a voice, not clear, as if it were being smothered, but still distinct enough for me to understand every word. "Leave before it's too late." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My room was silent, but I could feel it. Someone had been standing by my bed. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the fear. It was just a dream. But then I pulled back my blanket, and there, on my arm, scratched into my skin as if by invisible nails, was a single word. "Run." My breath caught in my throat. I reached up and touched the marks. They were real. Still red, still stinging. This wasn't just my imagination. This house was trying to tell me something. And I was starting to fear that if I didn't listen, I might never get the chance to run. The strange occurrences in our new house grew more terrifying by the day. But what unsettled me the most wasn't the shadows or the whispers in the night. It was the dreams. I started dreaming about our old house, the one my family lived in when I was a child. At first, the dreams were simple. I would find myself walking through familiar rooms, every detail oddly vivid, as if I were actually there. But something was different. The house was always empty. No furniture, no lights, no sounds. Just me, standing in a silent space that felt both familiar and deeply, eerily wrong. After a few nights, the dreams changed. I wasn't just wandering anymore. I began to hear faint noises echoing through the old house. Soft footsteps creaking against wooden floors. The slow creak of a door opening somewhere. Distant whispers I couldn't quite make out. I could feel something moving around me, but I could never see it. And then, one night, in a dream, I heard a voice. It wasn't a distant whisper anymore. It was clear, deep, and it called my name. I'm still here. I woke up drenched in cold sweat. The dreams became more detailed. I wasn't just aimlessly walking through the house. I started reliving memories I didn't remember ever having. One night, I saw myself as a small child, sitting on my old bed, clutching my favorite stuffed bear. But I wasn't safe. I was staring, wide-eyed, at the corner of my dark room, where the closet door stood slightly ajar. Something was inside, and it was breathing. In the dream, I didn't dare move. I just sat there, frozen, trying not to make a sound. Then the closet door creaked open wider, and a hand reached out, long skeletal fingers, pitch black as if charred. I screamed, and I was yanked out of the dream, back to reality. But when I woke up, I realized something. I could still hear the breathing. It wasn't just in my dream anymore. It was in my room. After those nightmares, I began to notice something unsettling about the mirrors in the house. During the day, they seemed normal. But at night, every time I passed by one, something felt off. One night, I decided to check. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the dim glow of my nightlight casting faint reflections across the glass. I stared into my own eyes, trying to figure out what was making me so uneasy. And then I saw it. The reflection wasn't perfectly synced with me. It lingered a second too long. And then it smiled, even though my lips hadn't moved. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. When I blinked, the reflection returned to normal. But I knew what I had seen. Something was pretending to be me. Another night, as I slept, I was awakened by a sound. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up, heart pounding. I glanced at the clock, 3:15 a.m. At first, I thought it was my parents or my sister. Then I realized the knocking wasn't coming from my bedroom door. It was coming from the closet. I froze. Knock, knock, knock. Again. No, that's impossible. No one could be in there. I tried to calm myself, but then I remembered the dream. The hand reaching from the closet. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly reached for my bedside lamp. The moment the light flooded my room, the knocking stopped. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I hesitated before checking the closet. It was still shut, but when I reached out to touch the handle, a deep chill ran through me. There were scratches, long, deep, like something had been clawing at the inside of the door. After everything that had happened, my dreams shifted again. I didn't just dream of the old house anymore. I dreamed of myself. In the dream, I was standing in my bedroom, but I couldn't move. The air was thick, pressing down on my chest. I could sense something approaching, and then I heard the voice. A shadow crawled forward. Its figure was tall, unnaturally thin, its empty eyes locked onto mine. It didn't walk normally. It moved in jerky, unnatural motions like a marionette with its strings cut. I could feel it watching me. And then, just as it reached for me, I woke up, gasping, drenched in sweat. But as I looked down at my hand, every part of me went numb. Because there on my wrist was a mark. A handprint, black, smudged, ice cold. This wasn't just a dream. It was here, and I didn't know how to escape it. I couldn't sleep anymore. Not after everything that had happened. The dreams of the old house, the knocking at 3 a.m., the distorted reflections in the mirror, they were all leading to something. A warning, a truth I wasn't ready to face. I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion, but with each passing day, the fear became more real. And then, on a cold night at the end of the month, everything reached its breaking point. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was silent, except for the ticking of the clock and my own ragged breathing. And just as I was about to close my eyes, knock, 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 footsteps echoed down the hallway. Not normal footsteps. Slow, heavy, as if someone was dragging their feet across the wooden floor. I held my breath, every hair on my neck standing on end. I turned my head toward the door. The hallway light was blocked by a shadow. Someone, or something, was standing just outside my room. The door creaked open. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. And then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn. No sound, no other sign, just the door inching open. A sliver of darkness appeared, just enough for me to see what stood in the hallway. A tall, twisted figure. It had no eyes, yet I could feel it watching me. My hand shook as I grabbed my phone, frantically dialing my sister's number. But just as the screen lit up, my blood ran cold. Call failed. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The door opened wider. The shadow stepped in. I pressed myself against the wall, trembling, as if I could disappear into the darkness and escape. But then, I blinked, and everything around me changed. I was no longer in my bedroom. I was standing in the old house. Rotting walls, creaking floorboards beneath my feet. The air smelled of damp decay. A cold stillness lingering like forgotten memories. The house was empty, but I knew I wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed behind me. I told you not to come back. The voice. I knew it. A woman's voice. Weak but filled with sorrow. I turned, and I saw her. She stood in the shadows, hair draped over her face. But I recognized her eyes, hauntingly familiar. "Who are you?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She simply raised a trembling hand and pointed behind me. I turned. The shadow was still there. But this time I saw it clearly. And I realized the most horrifying truth. It had my shape. It wasn't just some lost spirit. It was a part of me. Memories surfaced, fragments of dreams, distorted reflections. The unsettling feeling of being followed. I wasn't just haunted. I was part of the curse. The woman spoke again, her voice heavier this time. It won't stop. Not unless you stop. Run or face it. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The old house blurred, and suddenly I was back in my bed, gasping for air. The door to my room was still open, but the hallway was empty. My phone lit up with a message. You've seen it now, haven't you? No name. No number. This wasn't over. I don't know how I managed to wake up the next morning. After everything that had happened, I should have gone insane or run as far away as possible. But instead, I lay in bed, cold sweat dripping down my spine. My heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. The room was still silent. The door was still ajar, just as I had seen it the night before. Weak morning light streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the walls. It took me a moment to gather the courage to move, to check my body. No wounds, no physical evidence of what had happened. But I knew it wasn't a dream. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up with an unread message. You've seen it now, haven't you? No name, no number. I held my breath. Who sent this? Someone who knew? Or worse, was it the one trying to reach me? I shot out of bed, ran into the hallway, scanning my surroundings. Everything looked normal, but the creeping unease clung to me like a second skin. I needed to find out the truth. I rummaged through old documents in the house, desperate for any clue about this place. Why was it doing this to me? Then I remembered the dream, the woman. I knew her. I had seen her before. I went to the local library, digging through old records about the house. And when I turned to a newspaper clipping, my breath hitched. A black and white photograph showed a woman standing in front of this very house. Her long hair veiled part of her face, but I recognized her eyes, haunted, full of despair. It was her. The article detailed a mysterious disappearance in 1972. The woman in the photo was Marion Caldwell. She had lived here with her family, but one night, she vanished without a trace. The police searched for months, but found nothing. Her husband claimed she had been acting strangely before she disappeared, talking to someone in the mirrors, waking up with scratches on her skin. He thought she was losing her mind, but after she was gone, he started hearing footsteps in the house, knocking at midnight. No one ever found out what really happened to Marion. But I knew she never left this place. She was trapped between two worlds, and now she was trying to warn me. Or maybe she was warning me about something else. I left the library with a crushing weight in my chest. It felt like a storm was brewing, and I couldn't escape it. I checked my phone again. Another message. You can't run. No number. No sign of who sent it. My heart clenched. I glanced around the house. Everything looked the same, but the air felt different. Then I noticed it, the mirror in the living room. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't remember turning it to face my bedroom, but now it was there, reflecting the darkened space behind me. I stepped closer. The reflection in the mirror wasn't me. It was taller, thinner, and its eyes, black, hollow, locked onto mine, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. Then it smiled. No sound, no movement, but I felt its laughter echo inside my mind. I stumbled back. The reflection didn't move. It just stood there, watching. My phone vibrated. An incoming call. No number displayed. I swallowed hard and answered. Silence. Then, a soft breath, and a voice, my voice, whispered through the speaker. You chose the wrong place. And now, it won't ever let you go. That was when I realized the most terrifying truth. I hadn't just moved into a haunted house. I had stepped into a game I couldn't escape. This house wasn't just cursed. It was a trap, a carefully designed snare to lure new souls into its cycle. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. But maybe I was the only one to realize it before it was too late. I had to leave. I didn't care about my belongings. Didn't care what happened to the house. I sprinted to my car, slammed the door shut, and floored the gas pedal. But as I sped down the main road, my phone lit up again. Another message. Did you really think you could leave so easily? I didn't look back. I kept driving. But deep down, I knew this game wasn't over.